The lecture hall smelled like metal and something Daniel could not quite identify. He sat in the back row, watching other students file in with their colorful skin and strange body shapes. Some had 4 arms. Others had scales that shimmered under the lights. A few glowed faintly in the dim corners of the room. Daniel Reed was human, just human. No special abilities, no impressive size, no natural armor or weapons. He carried a worn backpack and wore the standard academy uniform that fit him poorly. The other students gave him looks, some curious, most dismissive. A massive creature with gray skin and tusks pushed past him without apology. Another student, thin and covered in crystal-like formations, deliberately moved seats when Daniel tried to sit nearby. Professor Drouth entered the room. The Rakan instructor stood nearly 8 feet tall with thick muscles and battle scars across his face. He activated the holographic display at the front of the room. "Today we discuss dangerous fauna," Drouth announced. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Specifically, how to contain aggressive predators without getting yourselves killed." The hologram showed a snarling creature with too many teeth and claws like daggers. Students leaned forward, interested. Daniel pulled out his notebook and began taking notes by hand. Most others used digital tablets. "Shock nets," Drouth continued. "Stun weapons, containment fields, these are your tools. Hesitation gets you killed. Aggression keeps you alive." Daniel raised his hand. Several students turned to look at him. A few snickered. "Yes," Drouth said, his tone already impatient. "What about nonviolent containment?" Daniel asked. "If we study their behavior patterns, we could use calming pheromones or avoid confrontation entirely." Silence fell over the classroom. Then someone laughed, others joined in. Torgeth, the largest student in class, spoke up from the front row. "Typical human softness. You think you can talk a predator out of eating you." More laughter. Daniel felt heat rise to his face but kept his expression neutral. "Predators respond to strength," Torgeth continued. "Not weakness. This is why humans are barely accepted here. No warrior instinct." Professor Drouth held up a hand for silence. "Reed, your suggestion is noted. However, in real situations, you will not have time for behavioral analysis. You react or you die. Moving on." Daniel sank lower in his seat. He wrote in his notebook anyway, making notes about alternative approaches. His mother ran a veterinary station on New Montana. He grew up helping injured animals. He knew fear-based aggression from true danger. But no one here wanted to hear that. The lecture continued. Drouth showed case studies of failed containment operations. Each one ended with casualties. Each one reinforced the same message: be aggressive, be strong, or be dead. After class, Daniel gathered his materials slowly. Other students left in groups, talking and laughing together. No one waited for him. Kellen, his assigned study partner, approached. The Lumini student's crystalline body refracted light in rainbow patterns. "Daniel, about the group project." "Yes," Daniel looked up hopefully. "I think it would be better if we worked separately, then combined our research later." Kellen would not meet his eyes. "My other friends suggested it would be more efficient." Daniel understood. Kellen did not want to be seen working with the weak human. "Sure, whatever works best." Kellen left quickly. Daniel finished packing his bag. The worn medical kit inside shifted as he moved. His grandmother gave it to him before she died. She told him that healing was the bravest thing anyone could do. The academy did not see it that way. The hallway outside buzzed with activity. Students from dozens of species moved between classes. Daniel walked alone, keeping his head down. He heard whispers as he passed. "That is the human. I heard he suggested hugging the predators. His species barely survived their own planet. Now they think they belong here." Daniel kept walking. He knew this would be difficult. Humans were new to the galactic community. Only 3 were enrolled at the academy this year. The others stayed in their dorms most of the time, avoiding the harassment. But Daniel came here for a reason. He wanted to prove humans had value beyond military strength. That compassion and understanding mattered just as much as fighting ability. That kindness was not weakness. The cafeteria was crowded. Daniel grabbed a tray and found an empty table in the corner. He ate alone, reviewing his notes. Around him, other students celebrated, competed, and bonded. He was invisible to them, or worse, visible but dismissed. Shara, a sleek Velrani with silver fur and sharp features, walked past his table. She was in his xenobiology class, one of the top students. She glanced at him, then deliberately turned away. Her friends laughed at something she said. Daniel did not need to hear it to know they were mocking him. He finished eating quickly. As he stood to leave, the announcement system activated. "Attention all second-year students," the voice echoed through the cafeteria. "Mandatory field expedition to Tarath 9 begins in 3 days. This is a survival training exercise. Group assignments will be posted tonight. Prepare accordingly." The room erupted in excited chatter. Tarath 9 was famous among academy students, a moon covered in dangerous wildlife. Many students failed the exercise. Some got seriously injured. It was the test that separated the capable from the weak. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. He would be assigned to a group. They would resent having him. They would probably try to get him removed from the exercise. Or worse, they would let him come and then abandon him at the first sign of trouble. He returned to his dorm and checked the assignment board on his tablet. His name appeared in Group 7 along with 3 others, Torgath, Shara, and Bryn. Torgath, who openly mocked him, Shara, who treated him like he did not exist, Bryn, a quiet lumini he barely knew. Daniel sat on his bed and opened the medical kit. Inside were bandages, antiseptic, surgical tools, and emergency supplies. Everything was organized perfectly. He checked each item, making sure nothing was missing. His roommate was gone for the weekend. The room was quiet. Daniel lay back and stared at the ceiling. In 3 days, he would be on Tarath 9 with a group that hated him, surrounded by predators that wanted to kill him, with equipment that was older and less effective than what everyone else had. He thought about quitting, going home. His family would welcome him back. No one would blame him. But his grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. Brave is not the absence of fear. Brave is doing what is right even when you are terrified. Daniel closed his eyes. In 3 days, everything would change. He just did not know how much. The transport ship rattled as it broke through Tarath 9 atmosphere. Daniel gripped his seat harness and tried not to look nervous. Across from him, Torgath sat relaxed with his arms crossed. Shara cleaned her claws with deliberate slowness. Bryn stared out the window, her crystalline features unreadable. No one had spoken to Daniel since they boarded. That was fine. He spent the trip reviewing the mission, briefing on his tablet. Track a predator, document its behavior, contain it safely. Return to base camp, simple on paper, deadly in practice. The ship landed hard. The loading ramp lowered, revealing a forest unlike anything on Earth. Purple vegetation stretched in every direction. Trees with black bark and glowing leaves created a canopy that filtered the light into strange patterns. The air smelled sweet and wrong. "Group 7, move out," Professor Drouth's voice crackled through their comm units. "You have 48 hours. Do not make me come looking for you." Torgath immediately took charge. "I lead. Shara, you track. Bryn, handle navigation. Human, try not to die." Daniel said nothing. He adjusted his backpack and followed the group into the forest. His equipment was basic compared to theirs. They had advanced scanners and weapons. He had a compass, a knife, and his medical kit. The Academy provided what it considered appropriate for each species' capabilities. They walked for 2 hours. The forest grew denser. Strange sounds echoed around them, clicks and whistles and low rumbles that made Daniel's skin prickle. Twice they spotted small creatures watching from the shadows. Each time, Shara raised her weapon until the animals fled. "There," Bryn said quietly, pointing at the ground. "Tracks, large predator moving east." Torgath knelt to examine the prints. "Thornback, good. They are aggressive but predictable. We follow, set up containment, and finish early." Daniel studied the tracks too. Something seemed off. The spacing was irregular. One of the prints showed less weight distribution on the left side. "It might be injured," he said. Torgath did not even look at him. Thornbacks are not intelligent enough to fake injury. Move. They continued following the trail. Daniel noticed more signs: disturbed vegetation, marks on tree bark where something scraped against them heavily, blood drops nearly invisible against the purple ground. "We should approach carefully," Daniel tried again. "An injured predator is more dangerous." "An injured predator is easier to contain," Shara said coldly. "Which you would know if you paid attention in class instead of writing poetry about animal feelings." The group laughed. Even Bryn smiled slightly. Daniel fell silent. He stayed at the back of the group and kept watching the signs around them. The trail led them deeper into territory where the vegetation grew thicker and the light grew dimmer. Then they found the feeding site. Bones scattered across a clearing. Some were massive, from creatures Daniel could not identify. Others looked fresh. The smell hit them immediately: death and decay. "Thornback territory," Torgath said with satisfaction. "Set up the containment perimeter here. When it returns to feed, we capture it." "Bad idea," Daniel said before he could stop himself. "This is its home. It will defend aggressively. We should observe from a distance first." Torgath turned on him. "I have heard enough from you, human. You are here because Academy rules require full group participation. You contribute nothing. You know nothing. Stay quiet or go back to base." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Torgath began issuing orders. Shara unpacked shock nets. Bryn activated portable force field generators. They set up an ambush around the feeding site. Daniel moved to the edge of the clearing. Something felt wrong. The forest was too quiet now. The usual background noise of small creatures had stopped completely. Then he saw it. Movement in the shadows. Not the thornback they were hunting, something smaller, faster. It circled the clearing, watching them. "Torgath," Daniel said urgently, "we are being watched." "Of course we are," Torgath replied without looking. "Predators observe prey before attacking. That is why we set the trap." "No, I mean something else. Something is behind us." "Human paranoia," Shara muttered. The attack came from 3 directions at once. The thornback erupted from the undergrowth, but it was massive, far larger than the database indicated. Armor plating covered its body, quills extended from its back like spears, and it was clearly enraged. Torgath shouted orders. Shara activated the shock nets. They deployed too slowly. The thornback smashed through the nets like they were nothing. One of its quills launched toward Bryn. She threw herself sideways, but the quill grazed her shoulder. She cried out in pain. "Retreat," Torgath yelled. The group scattered. Daniel ran toward Bryn while the others fled in different directions. He reached her as she struggled to stand. The quill had torn through her protective suit. Crystal fragments from her injured shoulder flickered and dimmed. "Can you walk?" Daniel asked. "I think so." Her voice was tight with pain. Daniel helped her to her feet. The thornback roared behind them, destroying their equipment. They ran together into the forest, taking a path that led away from the feeding site. Behind them, the sounds of destruction continued, then stopped. The sudden silence was worse. They ran until Bryn collapsed. Daniel caught her and looked around. Dense forest surrounded them. No sign of Torgath or Shara, no sound of pursuit. He activated his comm unit. Static. The electromagnetic interference from the native plants blocked their signal. "We are lost," Bryn said weakly. Daniel scanned their surroundings. To the left, he spotted a dark opening in a rock formation. "Cave. We can rest there and treat your wound." They moved carefully toward the cave entrance. Daniel helped Bryn inside. He activated a small light from his pack. The cave was larger than it appeared from outside, extending back into darkness. Then they heard it, a low whimper from deeper in the cave. They were not alone. Bryn gripped Daniel's arm. "We should leave now." Daniel raised his light. In the beam, 2 eyes reflected back at them, green and bright. A shape moved in the shadows, smaller than the thornback but still dangerous. A creature covered in fur that looked almost crystalline. It limped forward slightly. One paw was wrapped in thorny vines, blood seeping through. The creature whimpered again, then growled, not aggressive, defensive, afraid. "It is hurt," Daniel whispered. "So are we," Bryn hissed. "Daniel, we need to go." But Daniel was already moving forward, slowly reaching for his medical kit. "What are you doing?" Bryn demanded. "Something stupid," Daniel admitted. "Or something right, I am not sure which yet." The creature watched Daniel with intelligent eyes. It was roughly the size of a large wolf but built differently. 6 legs instead of 4. Fur that caught the light like glass fibers, a long tail that twitched nervously, and that injured paw swollen and bleeding. "Daniel, this is insane," Bryn whispered from behind him. "That is a silvern. They hunt in packs. Where there is one, there are others." "This one is alone," Daniel said quietly. He kept his eyes on the silvern. "And hurt. It needs help." "We need help. I am injured. We are lost. We do not have time for this." Daniel understood her fear. He felt it too. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. But he also saw the pain in the creature's eyes, the way it held its paw off the ground, the slight trembling in its body. He slowly removed his helmet. The action made him vulnerable. The silvern could kill him easily now, but he needed the creature to see his face, to understand he was not a threat. "Hey there," Daniel said softly. "I know you are scared. I am scared too, but I want to help. Will you let me?" The silvern growled low, not aggressive, uncertain. Daniel opened his medical kit carefully. He held up a roll of bandages where the creature could see. "This is for wounds. It will help the pain stop. I promise I will not hurt you more than necessary." Behind him, Bryn made a sound of disbelief. "You are talking to it like it understands you." "Pain is a universal language," Daniel replied. "So is kindness." He took one step forward. The silvern tensed but did not retreat. Another step. The creature's ears flattened against its head. Another step. Daniel was now within striking distance. One snap of those jaws and his throat would be gone. He knelt down slowly, keeping his movements gentle and predictable. "I am going to look at your paw now," he said. "You can bite me if you need to, but please try not to." He reached out with one hand. The silvern flinched but held still. Daniel's fingers hovered inches from the injured paw. The thorny vines were embedded deep in the flesh. Local plant with barbed thorns designed to catch and hold. The creature must have stepped into a patch of them. "This is going to hurt," Daniel said honestly. "But after it will feel better. I need you to trust me." He looked into the silvern's eyes. For a moment they stared at each other. Human and alien predator, both afraid, both alone. Then the silvern lowered its head slightly. Not submission, permission. Daniel began working. He pulled specialized tweezers from his kit. One by one he removed the thorns. Each time he pulled one free, the silvern whimpered, but it did not pull away. It did not snap at him. "You are doing great," Daniel murmured. "Almost done, just a few more." Bryn watched in silence. Her earlier protests had died in her throat. She had never seen anything like this. Daniel removed the last thorn. The silvern let out a long breath. He quickly applied antiseptic to the wound. The creature flinched at the sting but remained still, watching Daniel's face. "Last step," Daniel said. He wrapped clean bandages around the paw, tying them securely but not too tight. His grandmother taught him this. Always leave room for swelling. Always check circulation. When he finished, he sat back. "There, all done." The silvern examined its bandaged paw. It tentatively put weight on it, then more weight. The pain was clearly reduced. The creature looked at Daniel again, then it did something unexpected. It licked his hand. The gesture was so simple, so trusting, that Daniel felt tears burn his eyes. He reached up slowly and touched the silvern's head. The crystalline fur was softer than he expected. The creature leaned into the touch. "I told you," Daniel whispered. "Kindness works." "Unbelievable," Bryn said. She had moved closer, her pain apparently forgotten in her shock. The instructors will never believe this. Daniel helped her sit down. He examined her shoulder wound, less serious than he feared. The quill had not penetrated deep. He cleaned and bandaged it with his remaining supplies. The Silvern watched them both. When Daniel finished treating Bryn, the creature moved closer. It pressed against his side, seeking warmth. "We should rest here until morning," Daniel said. "Then try to find the base camp." Bryn nodded. She was exhausted. Her injury and the stress had drained her. Within minutes, she was asleep against the cave wall. Daniel sat with the Silvern. He shared some of his food rations with the creature. It ate gratefully, then settled beside him with its head on his lap. "Thank you for trusting me," Daniel said quietly. He stroked the creature's fur. "I know how hard that was." The Silvern made a sound like a purr, different from a cat, deeper, more musical. Daniel thought about his classmates, about their mockery, about Torgath's words. No warrior instinct, typical human softness, weakness. Was this weakness, helping something in pain, choosing compassion over aggression? He did not think so. It took strength to approach a predator unarmed. It took courage to be gentle when everything around you told you to be violent. It took wisdom to see past fear to the truth underneath. The Academy taught survival through dominance, but dominance only created more fear, more violence, more death. Understanding created something different: connection, trust, peace. The ground trembled slightly. Daniel tensed. The Silvern's ears perked up. Another tremor, stronger this time. Then a roar, deep and furious, coming from outside the cave. The Thornback had found them. Daniel's heart sank. They were trapped. No weapons, limited supplies. Bryn was injured. The Silvern was injured. And outside, a creature 10 times their size wanted revenge for the attack earlier. The Silvern stood up, positioning itself between Daniel and the cave entrance. Its lips pulled back in a snarl. The creature was protecting him. "No," Daniel said. He stood and placed himself in front of the Silvern. "I will not let you get hurt because of me." The shadow appeared at the cave entrance, massive, blocking out the light. The Thornback had arrived. Daniel stood his ground. Behind him, Bryn woke with a gasp. The Silvern growled. The Thornback roared. And Daniel Reed, the weak human who everyone mocked, did the only thing he could think of. He stepped forward to meet the monster. "Please," he said to the Thornback, "let me help you too." The Thornback filled the cave entrance completely. Its armor plating scraped against stone as it pushed forward. Quills rattled on its back like deadly wind chimes. The creature's breath came in harsh, pained gasps. Daniel's hands shook, but he forced himself to stay calm. Behind him, Bryn was whispering desperate prayers in her native language. The Silvern pressed against Daniel's leg, growling protectively. Then Daniel saw it. The Thornback's left rear leg was dragging slightly. Cables from the shock net were still embedded in the flesh, twisted and tangled. The skin around them was inflamed and infected. Every movement caused the creature pain. "You are hurt," Daniel said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. "That is why you are so angry. The net is still in you." The Thornback roared. Spittle flew from its jaws. It could kill Daniel in seconds. One swipe of those claws, one bite with those teeth. Over. But it had not attacked yet, just roared and postured. Daniel slowly raised his hands, showing they were empty. "I know you want to hurt us. We hurt you first, but I can help. I can make the pain stop." "Daniel, what are you doing?" Bryn's voice was high with panic. "Something Professor Drouth never taught us," Daniel replied. "Empathy." He took one step toward the Thornback. The creature snapped its jaws in warning. Daniel froze but did not retreat. "I helped your friend here," Daniel gestured to the Silvern. "See the bandage. I removed thorns, cleaned the wound. The pain is less now. I can do the same for you." The Thornback looked at the Silvern. The smaller creature had stopped growling. It sat calmly beside Daniel, its bandaged paw visible. The Thornback's eyes moved between them, trying to understand this strange situation. Another step. Daniel kept talking in that same calm, soothing voice his mother used with frightened animals. The cables are infected. They need to come out. It will hurt when I remove them, but then the healing can start. Please let me try." He opened his medical kit slowly, showed the thornback his tools. The creature watched every movement but did not attack. "This is insane," Bryn whispered. "Thornbacks do not negotiate. They do not understand compassion." "Everything understands pain," Daniel said, "and everything understands relief from pain." He took another step, then another. He was now close enough to touch the thornback, close enough to die instantly if the creature chose violence. Instead, the thornback shifted its weight, exposing its injured leg more clearly. An invitation, or maybe a test. Daniel knelt beside the massive predator. This close, he could smell the infection, see the swelling around the embedded cables, feel the heat radiating from the inflamed tissue. "This is going to hurt," he warned. "Try not to eat me." He gripped the first cable. The thornback's muscles tensed. Daniel pulled steadily, working the twisted metal free from flesh. The creature roared in pain but held still. Blood flowed from the wound. Daniel kept working. Second cable, third. Each one embedded deeper than the last, each removal causing more pain, but the thornback did not strike him, did not even flinch away. "Almost done," Daniel murmured. "You are so brave, just one more." The last cable was the worst, twisted around muscle tissue. Daniel had to cut away damaged flesh to free it. The thornback's breathing grew rapid. Its claws dug furrows in the cave floor, but still it held still. Finally, the last cable came free. Daniel dropped it and immediately began cleaning the wound. He used the last of his antiseptic, knowing he had nothing left for other emergencies. He tore his shirt into strips to create bandages large enough for the thornback's leg. When he finished, he sat back. His hands were covered in blood. His supplies were gone. He was exhausted and terrified and strangely exhilarated. The thornback examined its bandaged leg. It stood and tested its weight. The pain was clearly reduced. The creature turned to look at Daniel. For a long moment they stared at each other. Predator and prey, alien and human, two beings who should have been enemies. Then the thornback lowered its massive head and touched Daniel's shoulder gently with its snout. The gesture was unmistakable. Gratitude. Daniel reached up and touched the creature's armored face. "You are welcome." The Silvern approached, limping on its healing paw. It touched noses with the thornback. Some communication passed between them that Daniel could not understand. Then both creatures moved to stand on either side of Daniel, flanking him, protecting him. "By the ancestors," Bryn breathed, "what are you?" "Just someone who thinks there is a better way," Daniel said. Light suddenly flooded the cave entrance. Voices shouted. A search party had arrived. "Movement detected. Prepare weapons." Daniel stood quickly, positioning himself between the creatures and the newcomers. Professor Drouth pushed into the cave, followed by Torgath, Shara, and several other instructors. All carried heavy weapons. "Reed," Drouth barked. "Step away from those predators immediately." "No," Daniel said. Shocked silence. Students did not refuse direct orders from instructors. "They are injured and docile," Daniel continued. "They will not attack unless threatened. Lower your weapons." "The human has lost his mind," Torgath said. "Sir, permission to tranquilize all 3 targets." "Denied," Drouth said slowly. His eyes moved over the scene, the bandaged creatures, Daniel standing between them, the medical supplies scattered around. "Explain yourself, Reed." Daniel gestured to the Silvern. "This one had thorns embedded in its paw. I removed them and bandaged the wound. The thornback had shock net cables causing infection. I removed those as well. Both creatures are now calm because they are no longer in pain." "You treated wild predators," Shara said in disbelief. "You used medical supplies on animals." "Sentient beings," Daniel corrected. "In pain, yes, I helped them, and they helped me in return. They protected us when we were vulnerable. Is that not what the Academy teaches? Mutual cooperation." Torgath raised his weapon. "Enough of this nonsense. These are dangerous animals. They need to be contained." He fired the tranquilizer dart shot. Toward the thornback, the silvern leaped. It intercepted the dart mid-flight, taking the sedative meant for its companion. The creature collapsed, unconscious, before hitting the ground. No, Daniel dropped beside the silvern, cradling its head. He looked up at Torgath with fury in his eyes. If anyone touches them again, you will answer to me. The entire search party stared at the human, weak, unarmed, outmatched in every way, threatening a warrior twice his size. Torgath laughed. You stop me, you are nothing. Maybe, Daniel said, but I am nothing that just saved 2 lives today. What did you save? Torgath's laughter died. The thornback moved beside Daniel, standing over the unconscious silvern, protecting them both. Its message was clear. To hurt Daniel, they would have to go through this apex predator first. Professor Drouth held up his hand. Everyone lower your weapons. We return to base camp immediately. And Reed, you and I are going to have a very long conversation. The medical bay hummed with quiet machinery. Daniel sat beside a large recovery tank where the silvern floated in healing fluid. The creature's eyes were closed, but its vital signs showed steady improvement. Through the window, he could see the thornback in a special outdoor enclosure. Both creatures were healing well. Daniel was not sure if he would be allowed to stay at the academy long enough to see them fully recover. The formal hearing was scheduled in 1 hour. Charges, protocol violations, endangering team members, unauthorized treatment of dangerous wildlife, possible punishment, expulsion. They are doing better, a voice said behind him. Daniel turned. Bryn stood in the doorway. Her shoulder was fully healed. Lumini regenerated quickly. Yes, Daniel said, they are strong. Bryn sat beside him. I testified already, told them everything that happened, what you did. Thank you. I am not sure it helped. Chancellor Vorath seems determined to make an example of you. She paused. Torgath has been telling everyone you lost your mind, that you put the entire expedition at risk. Maybe I did, Daniel admitted. Maybe I should have just left them in pain, come back and reported it, let the professionals handle it. Do you believe that? Daniel looked at the silvern. No, I would do it again. That is what I told them, that you knew the risks and chose compassion anyway. Bryn stood. Good luck. Daniel, for what it is worth, I think you were brave. She left. Daniel remained a few minutes longer, then headed to the hearing chamber. The room was smaller than he expected. 3 administrators sat at a raised platform. Chancellor Vorath in the center, his scarred, Hraken face showing no emotion. To his left, Adjunct Lyrian, a lumini with features like cut diamonds. To his right, Dean Orthan, a silver-furred Velrani with calculating eyes. Students filled the gallery. Torgath sat in the front with Shara beside him. Others Daniel recognized from classes. Most looked curious, some looked hostile, a few looked sympathetic. Daniel Reed, Vorath's voice boomed. You stand accused of serious violations. How do you plead? I do not deny what I did, Daniel said. If that is the same as guilty, then guilty. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Proceed with testimony, Vorath ordered. Torgath took the stand first. He described the expedition in harsh terms, how Daniel ignored orders, how his actions separated the group, how his obsession with the creatures put everyone at risk. He is emotionally unstable, Torgath concluded. Humans lack the discipline for academy training. This incident proves it. Shara testified next. She supported Torgath's account, adding details about Daniel's earlier behavior in class, his constant questioning of approved methods, his refusal to accept that violence was sometimes necessary. He thinks kindness can solve everything, Shara said. But the galaxy is not kind. His weakness endangers us all. Dean Orthan nodded along with her testimony. Adjunct Lyrian took notes without expression. Chancellor Vorath watched Daniel. Professor Drouth testified about the rescue operation, how they found Daniel standing between 2 predators, how he refused orders to stand down, how one creature took a tranquilizer dart meant for another. However, Drouth added, I must note that both creatures were indeed docile. Reed's treatment appeared to be effective, and his containment method, while unorthodox, achieved the mission objective without casualties. "Are you defending his actions?" Vorath asked. "I am providing complete facts, Chancellor. What the panel does with those facts is not my decision." Daniel was called to testify. He told the truth simply. He saw creatures in pain. He helped them. They responded with trust instead of aggression. "Why?" Vorath demanded. "Why? Risk your life for animals." "They are not just animals," Daniel said. "They are sentient beings capable of fear, pain, and gratitude, the same as us. Intelligence comes in many forms. Compassion should too." "Compassion is a luxury," Vorath replied. "In survival situations, you eliminate threats, you do not nurse them." "With respect, Chancellor, that is why the Thornback attacked so aggressively. It was responding to pain we caused. When I removed that pain, the threat ended. Violence created the danger. Compassion resolved it." "Or you were lucky," Dean Orthan said coldly. "Next time, such foolishness will get you killed." "Maybe," Daniel agreed. "But I would rather die trying to help than live knowing I caused unnecessary suffering." The gallery erupted in whispers. Vorath called for silence. "Does anyone else wish to testify?" Bryn stood. "I do." She described watching Daniel approach the Silvern, his calm demeanor, his skill, how the creature responded to his gentle treatment. "I mocked him before this," Bryn said quietly. "We all did, called him weak for suggesting nonviolent methods, but he was not weak. He was brave, braver than any of us. We chose fear and aggression because it was easy. He chose compassion because it was right." Other students began standing. One by one they asked to testify, students Daniel barely knew. They described small kindnesses, times he helped them with difficult concepts, moments when he showed patience instead of judgment. "He tutored me for 3 hours when I was failing xenobiology," a student said. "Never made me feel stupid." "He defended me when others mocked my accent," another added. "Stood up for me when no one else would." The testimonies continued. A pattern emerged. Daniel had been quietly helping others all along. His kindness extended far beyond the creatures on Tarath 9. Torgath shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Shara stared at the floor. Finally, Kellen stood, Daniel's former study partner. "I abandoned him," Kellen said. "He asked to work together and I refused because others told me humans were inferior. I was wrong. About humans, about him, about what strength really means." Chancellor Vorath raised his hand. The room fell silent. "This panel will deliberate. We will announce our decision shortly." They left. The wait felt eternal. Students whispered. Daniel sat alone at the front, trying not to hope too much. 15 minutes later, the panel returned. Vorath stood. His ancient eyes found Daniel's. "We have reached a decision regarding your status at this academy." Daniel stood. His legs felt weak, but he met the Chancellor's gaze without flinching. "Daniel Reed, all charges are dismissed." Gasps filled the room. "Furthermore, this panel awards you the Compassion Star for demonstrating advanced understanding of xenobiology through empathy and courage. You have shown us that true strength lies not in dominance, but in wisdom." Vorath's expression softened slightly. "I have learned something today about what it means to be strong. You are a credit to your species and to this academy. Well done." The gallery erupted in applause. Even some who had mocked Daniel before were clapping. Torgath sat frozen. Shara looked away. Daniel felt tears burn his eyes, but he blinked them back. "Thank you, Chancellor." "Do not thank me yet," Vorath said. "You are now responsible for developing our new nonviolent creature management protocols, starting immediately." Daniel smiled. "Yes, sir." As he left the chamber, students surrounded him, offering congratulations, asking questions. Bryn hugged him. Kellen apologized again, more earnestly this time. Through the crowd, Daniel saw Torgath watching. The Rakan student looked angry and ashamed. Their eyes met. Slowly, Torgath nodded, not friendship, but respect. It was a start. 3 weeks passed like a dream. Daniel no longer ate alone in the cafeteria. He no longer walked empty hallways between classes. Students who once ignored him now asked for his advice. Professor Drouth invited him to co-teach a seminar on alternative containment methods. The Silvern healed completely. The Thornback's infection cleared. Both creatures were scheduled for release back to Tarath 9 today. Daniel stood at the transport bay watching final preparations. Bryn joined him, along with Kellen and a dozen other students who wanted to witness the release. "Are you nervous?" Bryn asked. "Yes," Daniel admitted. "What if they are not ready? What if being here changed them too much?" "They are wild creatures," Kellen said gently. "They belong in the wild. You gave them that chance." The Silvern arrived first. It walked calmly beside its handlers, showing no aggression. When it saw Daniel, it pulled away and trotted to him directly. The creature pressed its head against his chest. Daniel wrapped his arms around it. "I will miss you," he whispered. "Stay safe out there." The Silvern made that musical purring sound. It licked his face once, then turned toward the transport ship. The Thornback came next. The massive predator moved carefully, still favoring its healed legs slightly. When it reached Daniel, it lowered its head for him to touch. Daniel stroked the armored face. "Thank you for trusting me," he said, "for showing everyone that kindness matters." The Thornback rumbled deep in its chest, a sound of acknowledgement. Then it followed the Silvern into the ship. The journey to Tarath 9 was quiet. Daniel watched the creatures through the cargo bay window. They rested side by side, calm and peaceful. Two apex predators who should have been enemies, connected by shared experience of human compassion. The ship landed in the same region where the expedition began. The loading ramp lowered. Violet forest stretched endlessly. Daniel walked the creatures to the forest edge. Other students hung back, giving him this moment. He knelt before the Silvern one last time, carefully removed the bandage that had long since served its purpose. The paw was fully healed, no scars, no pain. "You are free," Daniel said. "Go live your life." The Silvern hesitated. It looked at Daniel, then at the forest, then back at Daniel, torn between wild instinct and newfound bond. "I will be okay," Daniel promised, "and so will you." The Silvern howled. The sound echoed through the trees, beautiful and mournful. Then it turned and ran into the forest. It paused once at the tree line, looked back, and vanished into shadows. The Thornback watched the Silvern go. Then it turned to Daniel. The massive creature lowered its head until its face was level with the humans. They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing the same air, connected across species by something neither could name but both understood. Then the Thornback rose and walked into the forest. Its footsteps faded. The forest swallowed it whole. Daniel stood there long after both creatures disappeared. Bryn touched his shoulder. "That was beautiful," she said. "It was goodbye," Daniel replied. "I hate goodbyes." They returned to the ship. As they lifted off, Daniel watched the forest below. Somewhere down there, two healed creatures were resuming their lives, changed by their encounter with a strange, soft human who chose bandages over weapons. Back at the academy, life continued, but differently. Torgath approached Daniel in the corridor one evening. The Rakan student looked uncomfortable. "Read a moment." Daniel stopped. They had not spoken since the hearing. "I was wrong about you," Torgath said. "About humans, I apologize for my cruelty." "Apology accepted." "I wonder," Torgath hesitated. "Would you be willing to tutor me in your methods? I think I have much to learn." Daniel smiled. "Of course, we can start tomorrow." More students followed Torgath's example. Word spread beyond the academy. Daniel received messages from other institutions, requests for lectures, offers to study under him after graduation. News services ran stories about the human who talked to predators. Professor Drouth called him to his office one afternoon. "You have done something remarkable," the old Rakan said. Changed minds, changed protocols, changed the way we think about interspecies relations. I just helped some animals, Daniel said modestly. You did far more than that. You proved that evolution of empathy is as powerful as evolution of claws. Drouth pulled up a file on his display. I am offering you a research position after graduation, if you want it. Daniel stared. You want me to work here officially? I want you to continue what you started, teaching compassion, developing better methods, showing others that there is another way. Yes, Daniel said immediately. Yes, I accept. Weeks turned to months. Daniel's methods became standard curriculum. His papers were published in galactic journals. Other humans applied to the academy, citing him as inspiration. The change was slow but real. One evening, Daniel received an emergency message from Tarath 9. His heart sank. Had something happened to the creatures? He opened the message. It was from the preservation station, video footage attached. He played it. The video showed the Silvern in the forest, but it was not alone. Other Silverns surrounded it, a pack, and the original Silvern was demonstrating something to them. It approached a camera drone. Instead of attacking, it sat calmly. Let the drone scan it, then walked away peacefully. Subject has been observed teaching pack members non-aggressive behavior towards sentient technology, the message read. Appears to be transmitting learned behavior from human contact, requesting permission to study this development further. Daniel, watched the video 3 more times. The Silvern was spreading compassion, teaching others what it learned. The ripple effect extended beyond anything he imagined. He sent approval for the study, then sat back in his chair. Through his window, stars filled the darkness. Somewhere out there, his grandmother was probably watching, proud of him, proud that her gift, her medical kit, helped start something beautiful. Daniel opened his journal and wrote, "Today I learned that kindness is not just an action. It is a seed. Plant it once and it grows forever, spreading farther than you can see, touching lives you will never meet." He closed the journal and looked at the stars again. Tomorrow he would teach, he would help, he would show others that compassion was not weakness. It was the strongest thing in the universe. Years later, Daniel Reed would become chief xenobiologist for the Galactic Council. His methods would revolutionize how species interacted across hundreds of worlds. But he never forgot where it began, in a dark cave on Tarath 9, with an injured Silvern, with a simple choice. Help or walk away. He chose help, and that made all the difference. The end.
The cargo hold smelled like fear and blood. Daniel Reed wrinkled his nose as he stepped through the heavy door, his boots clanging on the metal floor. 3 weeks into his first deep space job, and he still wasn't used to the sounds a ship made. Every creak and groan set his nerves on edge. Stay away from Container 7. First Officer Hallex had warned him that morning. The insectoid's mandibles clicked nervously when he spoke. The beast inside will tear you apart if it gets the chance. Daniel had nodded and promised to be careful. But now, standing in the dim cargo hold with his maintenance checklist, he couldn't help his curiosity. Container 7 sat in the far corner, reinforced steel with bars thick as his arm. Warning lights blinked red around its frame. Something massive moved inside. He should have walked away, should have checked the other containers and finished his shift. Instead, Daniel found his feet carrying him closer. The snarl hit him first. Low and rumbling, it vibrated through his chest. Then he saw it. The creature was enormous. Bigger than any dog Daniel had ever seen, nearly the size of a small horse. Its body was covered in midnight blue scales that caught the dim light, with ridge-like fur running down its spine. 6 powerful legs ended in claws that looked sharp enough to cut through steel. When it turned its head toward him, Daniel saw eyes like molten amber burning with pure rage. A Varkesh stalker. He'd read about them in the ship's database. Apex predators from a high-gravity world. Known across 3 sectors for their viciousness, this one had been loaded onto the distant horizon at the last station, bound for some research facility deeper in space. The stalker lunged at the bars. Metal screeched. Daniel's heart hammered, but he didn't step back. Something in those amber eyes held him frozen. Not the violence, but something underneath it. Something that reminded him of a cornered animal rather than a mindless killer. Beautiful, isn't it? Engineer Bors rumbled from behind him. The granite looked like walking stone, his craggy face expressionless, in the way that death is beautiful. How long has it been like this? Daniel asked. Since we loaded it. 11 days now. Won't eat, won't drink. Just snarls and attacks anything that comes close. Captain wants to space the whole container. Save us the trouble. Daniel moved closer to the cage. The stalker's lips pulled back, revealing teeth like daggers. That snarl turned into something between a roar and a scream. But Daniel noticed other things too. The way the creature's breathing came too fast, how it favored its left side, the dried blood matting the fur along its flank. It's hurt, Daniel said. Bors made a sound like grinding rocks. Laughter, maybe. It's a terror hound human. Probably hurt itself trying to break free. They're not smart enough to know when to stop fighting. Daniel didn't argue, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Bors was wrong. Those eyes were too intelligent, too aware. This wasn't mindless rage. This was fear. The stalker circled inside its cage, never taking its eyes off Daniel. Its tail, thick and powerful, lashed against the bars. But after a moment, the snarling quieted to a low growl. Still threatening, still dangerous, but watching now. Waiting. I should report this to the captain, Daniel said quietly. That injury could get infected. The whole cargo could be worthless if it dies. Captain won't care. Thing's more trouble than it's worth. Bors turned to leave. Finish your maintenance check and stay away from that cage. I don't want to scrape what's left of you off the floor. When Bors left, Daniel stood alone in the cargo hold with the stalker. The creature had settled into a crouch, those amber eyes still fixed on him. Its breathing was labored, painful. The wound on its flank looked worse up close, infected and angry. How long had it been in pain? How long since it had been taken from wherever it came from, thrown into a cage and hauled across space to be delivered like a package? Daniel pulled out his datapad and started recording notes. The injury, the behavior, the signs of distress. Captain Wren might not care about a dangerous animal, but he would care about losing money on dead cargo. I'll try to help, Daniel said softly to the stalker. I know you don't understand me, but I'll try. The creature's ears, swept back ridges along its skull, twitched slightly. Then the snarling started again, louder than before. Daniel finished his shift and headed to the captain's quarters. Wren was a Maltuvian, 4 arms and a face that showed every one of his 60 years in space. He listened to Daniel's report with growing impatience. The beast is a lost cause, Wren said, waving 2 hands dismissively. I've seen its kind before. They don't survive captivity. It'll be dead before we reach the research station. But the contract has penalties for damaged goods, yes, but the station knows what they're getting. A Varkesh stalker. Everyone knows they're nearly impossible to transport alive. Wren leaned back in his chair. You're new to space, Reed. You'll learn. Not everything can be saved, especially not something that wants to kill you. Daniel left the captain's quarters with a hollow feeling in his chest. Back in his own small room, he pulled up everything the ship's database had on Varkesh stalkers. There wasn't much. Dangerous, aggressive, pack hunters, never successfully domesticated. High intelligence but hostile to other species. But one line caught his attention. Stalkers removed from pack structures exhibit extreme stress responses and often die in captivity. Daniel thought about those amber eyes, the fear underneath the rage. A pack animal, alone and terrified, lashing out at everything because it didn't understand what was happening to it. He'd grown up with dogs on Earth, rescues mostly. Animals that had been abused or abandoned, that snarled and bit because they'd learned that humans meant pain. His mother had taught him patience, how to read body language, how to let them come to you instead of forcing contact. This was different. This was an alien creature that could easily kill him. That probably would kill him if he gave it the chance. But those eyes, Those intelligent, terrified eyes. Daniel made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow he would go back to that cage. He would try something that everyone would call stupid, reckless, impossibly human. He would try to help the terror hound. Outside his window, stars streaked past as the distant horizon pushed deeper into space, carrying its cargo of goods and one very dangerous creature toward an uncertain future. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Daniel lay in his bunk listening to the ship's engines hum through the walls. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those amber eyes staring back at him, full of rage and terror in equal measure. By the time his shift started, he'd made up his mind. Whatever happened, he couldn't just watch the stalker die. The cargo hold was quieter during the night cycle. Most of the crew slept while the ship's automated systems kept them moving through the vast emptiness of space. Daniel had volunteered for the late shift, knowing it would give him time alone with the creature. He brought a portable light and his datapad. No food, no tranquilizers, nothing that might seem threatening. Just himself and the knowledge he'd gathered through hours of research. The stalker was awake when he arrived. It always seemed to be awake. Those amber eyes tracked him as he walked across the cargo hold, but this time, the snarl came slower, quieter, as if the creature was too tired to maintain its fury. Daniel sat down on the floor about 3 meters from the cage, close enough to see, far enough to be safe if the stalker lunged. He set his datapad beside him and just breathed, letting the silence settle. "I read about you," he said softly. "Your people, I mean. Varkish stalkers from Vrakon before. High-gravity world, thick forests, pack hunters. You're supposed to live in groups of 10 to 15. Hunt together. Raise young together." The stalker's ears twitched. It hadn't moved from its corner, but it was listening. "They took you from your pack, didn't they? Just grabbed you and threw you in a cage. No explanation. No understanding. Just you alone, for the first time in your life." Daniel knew he was projecting. The creature couldn't understand his words. But something in its body language changed. The rigid tension eased slightly. The growl faded to something almost like a whine. "I had a dog once," Daniel continued. "A rescue. Someone had beaten him so badly he couldn't trust anyone. First time I met him, he bit me. Drew blood. Everyone said I should give up, that he was too damaged. But my mom said something I never forgot. She said fear and anger look the same from the outside. You have to look deeper to see which one you're dealing with." He stayed there for an hour, just talking, telling stories about Earth, about the animals he'd known, about learning patience from his mother. The stalker never moved from its corner, but its eyes never left him either. And gradually the growling stopped altogether. Over the next few days, Daniel fell into a routine. Every shift he would spend time near the cage. Never pushing, never demanding, just being present. A calm, predictable presence in the stalker's chaotic world. He noticed patterns. The creature was most aggressive after the feeding drones came. Their mechanical arms shoving food through a slot in the cage. It hated the drones, snarling and snapping even though it never ate what they brought. But when Daniel was there, when the cargo hold was quiet, the stalker would sometimes approach the bars. Watching, waiting for something Daniel couldn't quite name. On the 5th day, he saw the wound clearly for the first time. The stalker had shifted in its sleep, and the infected gash along its left flank was visible in the light. Red and swollen, the edges crusted with dried blood. It had to be agony. Daniel went straight to First Officer Hallex. "I need medical supplies," he said. "Antibiotics, pain medication, something to treat infected wounds." Hallex's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "For the stalker? It's dying, slowly. That infection is going to kill it if we don't treat it. The creature won't let anyone close enough to treat it. I can do it remotely. Use a medical drone to inject antibiotics into its food. If it starts eating, the medication will help. If the pain eases, maybe it'll calm down enough to actually treat the wound properly." Hallex considered this. As first officer, he had the authority to approve medical supplies for cargo. "Captain Wren won't like it. He's already written off this shipment. Then he won't care if we try." Daniel met the insectoid's multifaceted eyes. "What's the worst that happens? It doesn't work and we lose cargo we've already lost." "The worst that happens," Hallex said slowly, "is that you get close enough for it to kill you." "But you're right. We've already lost this cargo. Might as well try to salvage something." He authorized the supplies. But Daniel, be careful. Humans have a reputation for caring too much about things that want them dead. That evening, Daniel prepared the food himself, real meat from the galley's synthesizer, laced with antibiotics and pain medication. He placed it in the cage using the mechanical arm, then retreated to his usual spot on the floor. The stalker approached slowly. It sniffed the food, then looked at Daniel. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then the creature lowered its head and began to eat. Daniel felt something tight in his chest ease. It was a small victory, but it was something. The next morning, the change was visible. The stalker's breathing came easier. It moved with less pain, though the wound still looked terrible. But more importantly, when Daniel entered the cargo hold, the creature didn't snarl. It watched him with those amber eyes, and there was something different in them now. Not trust, not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. A crack in the wall of fear and rage that had surrounded the creature since it was caged. "Hey there," Daniel said softly, settling into his usual spot. "Feeling better?" The stalker's tail twitched. Not the aggressive lashing from before, but something almost curious. It approached the front of the cage, massive paws silent despite their size. Up close, Daniel could see the individual scales on its body, the way they overlapped like armor. The ridge fur along its spine was matted and dirty, but underneath he could see hints of a deeper blue, almost purple in the right light. "You're beautiful," Daniel said. "Anyone ever tell you that?" "Probably not. Probably they just saw the teeth and the claws and decided you were a monster." The stalker tilted its head. Its ears, those swept-back ridges, perked forward. Not aggressive, interested. Daniel took a risk. He pulled out his datapad and played a sound file he'd found in the ship's database. Varkesh pack calls, recordings made by researchers from a safe distance. The sounds were complex, somewhere between howls and musical notes, layered in harmonics that seemed impossible for a single creature to make. The stalker's reaction was immediate. Its body went rigid, every muscle tensing. Then it threw back its head and answered the call. The sound that came from its throat was heartbreaking, lonely, desperate. A pack call with no pack to answer. When the echoes faded, the creature lowered its head and made a sound Daniel had never heard before, soft and almost questioning. A whimper. "I'm sorry," Daniel said, his own throat tight. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted to understand." The stalker looked at him, and for the first time, Daniel saw past the predator. He saw a person. Different, alien, dangerous, yes, but a person nonetheless. Intelligent, emotional, suffering. That night, Daniel made another decision. This one even more reckless than the first. He was going to enter that cage. He was going to treat that wound properly, and if the stalker killed him for it, well, at least he would have tried. He just had to figure out how to convince Captain Wren to let him do something so completely insane. Daniel found Captain Wren in the observation deck, staring out at the stars with two of his forearms crossed behind his back. The Maltuvian turned when Daniel approached, his weathered face showing mild irritation. "Let me guess," Wren said. "You want to do something stupid with the stalker?" "I want to enter the cage," Daniel said. "No point in dancing around it. The creature is healing, but that wound needs proper treatment. I can't do it with drones." Wren's other two arms crossed over his chest. "Absolutely not. I'm not explaining to headquarters why I let crew walk into a death trap. It's not a death trap anymore. The stalker is calmer. It's eating. It responds to me. It's a predator, Reed. You've spent, a week sitting near its cage. That doesn't make you friends. That makes you patient prey. With respect, Captain, I think you're wrong." Daniel pulled out his datapad and showed the recordings he'd made. The stalker eating while he watched. The way it approached the bars without aggression. The almost curious tilt of its head when he spoke. Wren watched in silence, his expression unreadable. When the last video finished, he sighed. "You humans are going to get yourselves killed one day. You know that, right? This instinct to befriend everything with teeth." "Maybe," Daniel admitted, "but that instinct is also why we survived on Earth. We didn't just fight predators. We learned to work with them. Wolves became dogs. Wildcats became companions. We're good at making friends with things that want to eat us. This isn't a wolf, Reed. It's an alien creature with intelligence we barely understand and instincts we can't predict. Which is exactly why we should try to understand it better. Captain, this stalker is dying inside that cage. Not just physically, but mentally. You read the reports. They're pack animals. Isolation is torture for them. Every day we keep it locked up alone, we're breaking it further. And your solution is to walk in there and hope it doesn't rip you apart? My solution is to try. To show it that not everyone is an enemy. To treat its wound and give it a chance to heal. Daniel met the captain's eyes. If it kills me, that's on me. But if I don't try and it dies in that cage, that's on all of us. Wren was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. First Officer Hallex would need to supervise. Full safety protocols, containment fields, tranquilizer systems, the works. And at the first sign of aggression, you're out. Understood? Understood. And Reed, if this goes wrong, I'm noting in the log that you insisted against direct orders. I won't have this reflect on my command record. Daniel nodded, knowing it was as close to permission as he would get. 2 hours later, the cargo hold had been transformed into something resembling a medical facility. Hallex had set up emergency containment fields around the cage, ready to activate if the stalker attacked. Engineer Bors stood at the controls for the tranquilizer system, his stony face doubtful. Captain Wren watched from a monitor on the bridge, along with the rest of the senior crew. Daniel stood outside the cage door with medical supplies in a pack on his back and his heart hammering in his chest. The stalker watched him from inside, those amber eyes following his every movement. Last chance to back out, Hallex said, his mandibles clicking nervously. I'm going in, Daniel said. His hands were shaking. He clenched them into fists to stop the trembling. The cage door opened with a mechanical hiss. Daniel stepped inside and the door sealed behind him with a clang that seemed far too final. The stalker didn't move. It sat in the middle of the cage watching him, waiting. Daniel could see the tension in its body, the way its muscles coiled beneath the scales. One wrong move and it would strike. He knew that. Everyone watching knew that. Daniel took a slow breath and sat down on the floor. Not approaching. Not threatening. Just making himself small and vulnerable in the way that animals understood. Hey, he said softly. It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you. The stalker's nostrils flared, taking in his scent. Its ears twitched forward, then back. Deciding. Judging. Daniel pulled the medical supplies from his pack, moving slowly and deliberately. Antiseptic. Clean bandages. A synthetic skin sealant that would help the wound close. He laid them out between himself and the creature, showing what he'd brought. I want to help with that wound, he said. I know it hurts. I know you're scared. But if we don't treat it, it's going to get worse. And I think you know that too. The stalker made a low sound in its throat. Not quite a growl, but not friendly either. A warning, maybe. Or a question. Daniel pulled out a piece of fresh meat from his pack. He'd synthesized it himself, made sure it was the kind the stalker liked. He placed it on the floor and pushed it gently toward the creature. Peace offering, he said. The stalker looked at the meat, then at Daniel, then back at the meat. It leaned forward and sniffed. Then with surprising delicacy for something so large, it picked up the meat and ate it. Its eyes never left Daniel's face. When the meat was gone, the stalker took a step closer, then another, until it was standing directly in front of Daniel. So close he could feel the heat radiating from its body. This close he could see every detail. The way its scales caught the light, the scars on its muzzle from old fights, the intelligence burning in those amber eyes. Daniel didn't move, barely breathed. The creature lowered its massive head until its nose was inches from his face. It breathed in deeply, learning his scent. Learning him. Then, so slowly Daniel almost missed it, the stalker tilted its head to the side, exposing the ridge fur behind its ear. It was an invitation. Daniel's hand shook as he raised it. Every instinct screamed that this was insane. But he'd come this far. He'd asked for trust. Now the creature was offering it. His fingers touched the ridge fur. It was softer than he expected, warm and slightly coarse. The stalker's eyes half closed, and from deep in its chest came a sound like nothing Daniel had ever heard. A rumble, a purr, a sound of contentment. He scratched gently behind the creature's ear, and the stalker leaned into his touch. On the bridge, Captain Wren stared at the monitor in disbelief. By all the stars in the void, he whispered. In the cargo hold, Daniel felt tears on his face. Good, he whispered to the stalker. You're so good. I've got you. You're safe now. The stalker's tail wagged. Just once, but unmistakably. like a dog greeting someone it trusted. Daniel spent the next hour in the cage treating the wound while the stalker lay calmly beside him. The creature flinched when the antiseptic stung, but it didn't pull away, didn't attack. It trusted him to do what needed to be done. When he finally sealed the wound with synthetic skin, Daniel sat back and just rested his hand on the stalker's side. Feeling it breathe, feeling the life still strong inside it. "We did it," he said softly. "You're going to be okay." The stalker turned its head and looked at him. And in those amber eyes, Daniel saw something that changed everything. Not just acceptance, not just calm, recognition, connection, the beginning of a bond. When Daniel finally left the cage, Hallex met him at the door. "I have never," the first officer said slowly, "in my entire life seen anything like that." "What are you humans?" Daniel didn't have an answer. He just knew that somewhere in the vast complexity of human evolution, his species had learned something precious. They'd learned that the scariest creatures could become the truest friends. That fear could become trust. That isolation could become connection. All it took was patience, understanding, and the willingness to reach out your hand, even when you were terrified. The stalker watched him go, its amber eyes calm for the first time since being caged. And when Daniel looked back, he could swear the creature was smiling. The change in the stalker over the next week was remarkable. The creature that had once snarled at every shadow now greeted Daniel with something that looked suspiciously like joy. Its tail would wag when he entered the cargo hold. It would press against the bars of the cage, making soft chirping sounds until he came close enough to scratch behind its ears. Daniel found himself spending more time in the cage than out of it. He'd bring his meals down to the cargo hold, eating while the stalker rested beside him. He'd talk about Earth, about home, about the family he'd left behind to work in space, and the stalker would listen, its amber eyes fixed on his face, its ears perked forward. The crew noticed, of course. Engineer Bors stopped by one evening while Daniel was in the cage, running his hands through the stalker's ridge fur, checking for any signs of new injuries or problems. "I owe you an apology," Bors said, his gravelly voice softer than usual. "I called it a mindless beast." "I was wrong." "You weren't wrong," Daniel said. "You just didn't see what it could be, what it needed to be." He looked at the stalker, who had rolled onto its back like an enormous puppy, exposing its belly for scratches. It was never mindless. It was just scared and alone. "My people have records," Bors said slowly. "From hundreds of years ago, when a more advanced species came to our world, they treated us as mindless laborers, beasts of burden. It took us centuries to prove we were more than that, more than the fear they projected onto us." Daniel understood. Every species gets judged by its surface, but underneath there's always more. Your people seem to understand that better than most. Bors paused. "I've been reading about Earth, about the animals you've domesticated. It's an impressive list." "We didn't really domesticate them," Daniel said, scratching the stalker's belly until its back leg kicked involuntarily. "We partnered with them. They chose to work with us as much as we chose to work with them. Mutual benefit, mutual trust." The stalker made a groaning sound of contentment, its eyes closed in bliss. But the peace couldn't last forever. That night, Captain Wren called Daniel to his quarters. The Maltuvian's face was grim. "We received updated orders about our cargo," Wren said, pulling up a document on his screen. The research station sent details about what they planned to do with the stalker. Daniel read the document, and with each line his blood ran colder. Brain dissection, vivisection to study internal organ structures, tests on pain responses and aggression triggers. The stalker wasn't going to a sanctuary or a zoo. It was going to a lab where it would be tortured in the name of science. "They're going to kill it," Daniel said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Slowly, painfully." "It's legal," Wren said, but he didn't sound happy about it. "The Varkesh stalker species isn't classified as sentient. They're considered dangerous fauna. No protection under interstellar law. But it is sentient. You've seen the recordings. It understands. It communicates. It feels." "I know." Wren rubbed his face with two hands while the other two gripped the edge of his desk. "But I'm bound by contract, Reed. We deliver the cargo as specified. If we don't, we face penalties that could ruin this ship and everyone on it." Daniel felt something break inside him. He thought about the stalker in its cage, trusting him, waiting for him to come back each day. believing in whatever way it understood that it was safe now. "I can't let that happen," Daniel said. "Reed, I can't. Captain, I know what this means. I know what I'm asking. But that creature down there trusts me. It trusted me when it had every reason not to. When everyone told it humans were the enemy. And now I'm supposed to deliver it to be torn apart while it's still alive?" Ren looked at him for a long moment. "What are you proposing?" "There's a colony world. Haven's Rest. 3 days from here if we adjust course. They have loose regulations. They protect refugees, both sentient and non-sentient. If we could get the stalker there, that's theft of cargo. Breach of contract, fraud. We'd all lose our licenses, possibly face prison time. I know. And you're willing to risk that? Your entire career, your future for a creature you've known for 2 weeks?" Daniel thought about the stalker's amber eyes, the way it leaned into his touch. The trust it had given him when trust should have been impossible. "Yes," he said simply. "I am." Captain Wren was quiet for a very long time. Then he did something Daniel didn't expect. He smiled. "You know what the problem with long careers is, Reed? You stop remembering why you started, why you went into space in the first place as captain. I became a spacer because I wanted to see wonders, to find things in the universe that would amaze me. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that. I started seeing cargo, not creatures. Contracts, not connections." Wren stood up. "Maybe it's time I remembered." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that tomorrow I'm calling a crew meeting, and I'm going to present your plan, and we're going to vote on it." Wren met Daniel's eyes. "I can't promise they'll agree, but I think you might be surprised." The next morning, the entire crew of the Distant Horizon gathered in the common room. Captain Wren explained the situation, the research station's plans, Daniel's proposal, the risks they would all face if they helped. First Officer Hallex was the first to speak. "I've been researching the facility where we're supposed to deliver the stalker. They have a reputation, a bad one, multiple complaints filed with ethics committees. Nothing proven, but the pattern is clear. They don't care about the creatures they study. They just care about the data." Engineer Boers spoke next. "My people were once considered non-sentient by other species. We were enslaved. Worked to death. It took generations to gain recognition as equals." His rocky face was hard. "I won't be part of doing that to another species, even one that can't speak for itself." The navigator, a quiet woman named Freya, cleared her throat. "Haven's Rest is on our route if we go through the Azure Veil Nebula. Sensor interference there would explain any navigation adjustments. We could claim we got turned around, needed to dock for recalibration." One by one, the crew members spoke. Some worried about the consequences. Some questioned if they had the right to make this choice. But in the end, every single person voted the same way. They would save the stalker. Daniel went down to the cargo hold that night and sat beside the cage. The stalker pushed its nose through the bars, and Daniel held it gently in his hands. "We're going to get you out of here," he whispered. "I promise. You're going to be free. You're going to have forests and sky, and maybe, if we're lucky, you'll find others like you. A new pack." The stalker made its rumbling purr sound and licked Daniel's hand with a tongue that was surprisingly rough. "I won't be able to stay with you," Daniel continued, feeling his throat tighten. "Once you're free, I have to leave. But you'll be safe. That's what matters. You'll be safe, and you'll be free, and you'll never have to be afraid again." The stalker looked at him with those intelligent amber eyes, and Daniel wondered if it understood, if it knew that everything was about to change. Above them, the distant horizon adjusted its course. The stars shifted in the viewports, and the ship that had been carrying cargo toward a nightmare began carrying hope toward freedom instead. But the hardest part was still ahead. Getting the stalker off the ship, finding it a safe home, and then most difficult of all, saying goodbye to a creature that had become something Daniel never expected. A friend. 3 days in the Azure Veil Nebula felt like 3 years. The blue-purple clouds surrounded the ship, beautiful and dangerous, their charged particles playing havoc with the sensors. It was the perfect cover for what they were doing, but it also made navigation treacherous. Every crew member worked double shifts, checking and rechecking their course. Daniel spent almost every waking moment with the stalker. He was trying to prepare it for what came next, though he had no idea how to explain freedom to a creature that had lived in a cage for months. He just talked, his voice soft and constant, while the stalker listened with that intense focus it always gave him. "There's a place we're taking you," Daniel said. running his hands along the stalker's spine, feeling the way the ridge fur laid flat under his touch. A planet. Haven's Rest, it's got heavy gravity like your homeworld. Thick forests, open sky. There are people there who help creatures like you. Refugees. Animals that got caught up in bad situations. The stalker made a questioning sound, tilting its head. I know you don't understand. I wish you could. I wish I could tell you that everything's going to be okay and you'd really know what I mean. Daniel's voice cracked slightly. I wish I could go with you. But I can't. Once you're free, I have to leave. We all do. The ship needs to keep moving and you need to stay hidden. The stalker pushed its head under Daniel's hand, demanding more scratches. Daniel laughed despite the tears on his face. You've taught me something, he said. About trust. About how the scariest things can become the best things if you just give them a chance. I hope wherever you end up, someone else gives you that chance too. On the third day, they emerged from the nebula on the edge of the Haven's Rest system. Captain Wren contacted the colony's spaceport, reporting containment issues and requesting emergency docking. The port administrator, a tired-sounding woman who'd clearly dealt with stranger situations, granted permission without much question. Daniel had already made contact with the sanctuary. The director, a woman named Beth, had agreed to meet them at the docking bay. She'd asked very few questions, which Daniel appreciated. Haven's Rest had a reputation for accepting refugees of all kinds, no questions asked. It was why they'd chosen it. As the distant horizon descended toward the planet's surface, Daniel stood at the viewport in the cargo hold, watching the world grow larger. It was beautiful, green and blue, with massive forests covering most of the continents. White clouds drifted across the sky. It looked alive in a way that space stations and cargo ships never did. The stalker stood beside him, its front paws up on a cargo container to see out the viewport. Its tail wagged slowly and it made soft, excited sounds. Could it smell the forests through the recycled air? Could it sense somehow that this was a place like home? They landed with barely a jolt. Captain Wren's voice came over the intercom. Reed, we have 20 minutes before port control expects status updates. Make them count. Daniel opened the stalker's cage for the last time. The creature bounded out, full of energy that had been building for days. It circled Daniel, making happy sounds, clearly thinking this was another play session. Come on, Daniel said, his voice thick. Let's get you home. He led the stalker down the cargo ramp. The moment they stepped outside, everything changed. The stalker froze, its whole body going rigid. Its nostrils flared wide, taking in air that smelled of trees and earth and growing things. Air that hadn't been recycled through a ship's filters. Real air, from a real world. The creature threw back its head and let out a sound that made Daniel's chest ache. Not a howl, not a roar, but something between them. A cry of recognition, of homecoming. Beth was waiting at the edge of the docking pad with a transport vehicle. She was older than Daniel expected, with gray hair and weathered skin that spoke of years spent outdoors. When she saw the stalker, her eyes widened. That's a Varkesh stalker, she said. Yes. They're supposed to be impossible to handle, violent, unmanageable. They're supposed to be a lot of things, Daniel said. The stalker pressed against his leg, watching Beth with cautious amber eyes. Mostly they're just scared and alone. Beth studied the creature, then nodded slowly. We have a protected territory. 300 square kilometers of old-growth forest. Heavy gravity, similar to Vrakon 4. There's a river system, plenty of game. She paused. There are others, Daniel's heart jumped. Others? Other stalkers? A small pack. 4 of them. They were released illegally about 5 years ago by a transport crew that couldn't bring themselves to deliver them to a fight ring. They've been thriving here. Wild but healthy. If your friend can integrate with them... Beth trailed off, letting the possibility hang in the air. A pack. The stalker could have a pack again. The loneliness that had driven it mad in the cage, that had made it lash out at everything, could end. It could be whole again. Daniel knelt beside the stalker, pulling it close. The creature's scales were warm under his hands. Its breath was hot against his face. It licked his cheek with that rough tongue, and Daniel laughed through his tears. You're going to have a family again, he whispered. You hear me? A real pack. Not just me, but others like you. You're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to be free. The stalker made its rumbling purr sound and leaned into him, nearly knocking him over with its weight. Beth gave them a few minutes, then cleared her throat gently. We need to move. Port control will be checking in soon. Daniel nodded. He stood and the stalker stood with him. Together they walked to Beth's transport. The vehicle was open-topped, designed for moving through rough terrain. The stalker jumped in easily, clearly eager to move, to run, to explore this new world. Daniel climbed in beside it. He wanted these last few minutes. Needed them. Beth drove them away from the spaceport into the forest that bordered the landing area. The trees grew thick here, their trunks massive and ancient. The canopy overhead filtered the sunlight into green-gold patterns. The stalker stood up in the transport, its nose working constantly, taking in every scent. After about 10 minutes, Beth stopped at the edge of a clearing. "This is the border of the protected territory," she said. "Beyond this point, no hunting, no development, no interference. It's as wild as we can make it." Daniel stepped out of the transport. The stalker followed, but slowly now. He could sense something was ending. The creature pressed against Daniel's side, looking up at him with those amber eyes full of questions. "This is where you stay," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "This is home now. You're safe here, protected, free to run and hunt and live the way you were meant to." He buried his face in the stalker's ridge fur, breathing in its scent one last time. Dust and metal from the ship, but underneath something wild and animal and alive. "Thank you," he whispered, "for trusting me, for teaching me that fear and violence aren't the same thing, for being proof that connection is possible even when everything says it shouldn't be." The stalker licked his face, then pulled back. It looked at Daniel, then at the forest, then back at Daniel, deciding. And then from somewhere deep in the trees came a sound. A pack call. The complex harmonized howl song of Varkesh stalkers. The sound Daniel had played for the creature weeks ago on his datapad. But real now. Alive. The stalker's entire body went rigid. Its ears shot forward. It took a step toward the forest, then looked back at Daniel one more time. "Go," Daniel said, smiling through his tears. "Go find your pack. You don't need me anymore. You never really did. You just needed someone to give you a chance." The stalker touched its nose to Daniel's hand one final time. Then it turned and ran, 6 legs moving with incredible grace and power, scales flashing blue-purple in the dappled sunlight. It crashed through the undergrowth, heading toward the sound of its own kind, toward the family it had lost and was about to find again. Daniel watched until he couldn't see the stalker anymore. Couldn't hear it. Until there was nothing left but the forest and the wind in the trees. Beth touched his shoulder gently. "That was a good thing you did." "It was the only thing I could do," Daniel said. They drove back to the spaceport in silence. The distant horizon was already preparing for departure when Daniel climbed back up the ramp. Captain Wren was waiting for him at the top. "It's done?" the captain asked. "It's done. The stalker is free. There's a pack in the forest. It has a chance now." "A real chance," Wren nodded. "Then let's get out of here before anyone asks too many questions." As the ship lifted off, Daniel stood at the cargo hold viewport, watching Haven's Rest shrink below them. Somewhere down there, in a forest that looked like a tiny patch of green from this height, the stalker was running. Free. Wild. Home. He'd never see it again. Never scratch behind its ears or hear that rumbling purr. Never watch those amber eyes close in contentment. But it was worth it. Every risk, every consequence that might still come. It was all worth it to know that one creature who had been bound and broken was now free and whole. The viewport showed only stars now. The distant horizon was back in the void, heading away from Haven's Rest, carrying its crew toward whatever came next. There would be consequences. An investigation into the lost cargo. Questions they would have to answer carefully. But for now, for this moment, Daniel felt at peace. He'd done something that mattered. He'd reached out his hand to something terrifying and found a friend. He'd proven that trust, once given and returned, could change everything. And somewhere below, on a world covered in forests, a stalker ran through the trees, heading toward the sound of pack song, ready to be complete again. 6 months after leaving Haven's Rest, the investigation finally closed. The distant horizon had been fined heavily for losing its cargo, and the crew had taken a hit to their reputation. Daniel's file now carried a mark for negligence in cargo management. Some shipping companies wouldn't hire him anymore. The nice, safe corporate jobs he'd hoped for when he first went to space were permanently out of reach. He didn't regret it for a second. Captain Wren had retired, as planned, though he admitted the incident had influenced his timing. First Officer Hallex had been promoted to captain of the distant horizon. Engineer Bors remained, grumbling about regulations but secretly pleased they'd done the right thing. The crew stayed together, bonded by the secret they shared. Daniel had expected to struggle finding new work, but 3 weeks after the investigation ended, he received a message. An organization called the Frontier Conservation Initiative wanted to interview him. They'd been following his story through spacer networks, where the tale of the human who saved a terror hound had taken on a life of its own. The interview was simple. "We work with difficult species on frontier worlds," the director explained. "Creatures that colonists want removed but that we believe deserve better. Most of our staff are trained in standard animal management. They do good work, but they lack something. A perspective. A willingness to see beyond threat classifications." "And you think I have that perspective?" Daniel asked. "We think your species has it. Earth's history with domestication is unique in the known galaxy. You don't just conquer or avoid dangerous creatures. You befriend them. That's a valuable skill out here on the edge of civilization." Daniel took the job. His first assignment was on a mining colony where a species of pack predators had been raiding supply depots. The colonists wanted them exterminated. Daniel spent 3 months observing the creatures, learning their patterns. He discovered they weren't raiders. They were desperate. Mining operations had destroyed their primary hunting grounds, forcing them into contact with the colony. Working with both the colonists and the creatures, Daniel helped establish a protected zone where the predators could hunt safely. The raids stopped. The colonists kept their supplies, and a species that would have been wiped out survived. It was good work, important work. But Daniel never forgot the stalker. Late at night, alone in temporary housing on whatever world he was assigned to, he would pull up the holovid he'd kept, those security camera recordings of the stalker in its cage, the first time it had accepted his touch, the way its tail had wagged when it trusted him. He wondered if it was happy, if it had found its pack, if it remembered the human who had sat beside its cage and talked about Earth and dogs and trust. A year after leaving Haven's Rest, Daniel finally got his answer. He'd been assigned to a world near the Haven's Rest system, helping relocate a herd of massive herbivores away from expanding farmland. The work was going well and he had a few days of leave coming. On impulse, he booked passage to Haven's Rest. Beth met him at the spaceport, older by a year, but still sharp-eyed and energetic. "Wondered if you'd ever come back," she said. "I shouldn't," Daniel admitted. "If anyone traces my connection here, it could cause problems for you in the sanctuary." "Let them trace it. We've got lawyers, good ones, and public opinion on our side," she smiled. "Besides, I think someone wants to see you." They took the transport into the forest, following the same route Daniel remembered from that last day. The trees were taller now, or maybe he was just seeing them with clearer eyes. The forest smelled alive, rich with growing things and animal musk and earth. Beth drove deeper into the protected territory than before, following trails that were barely visible. "We don't come out here often," she explained. "The stalkers don't need us. But we monitor them, make sure they're healthy. Your friend integrated with the pack better than we hoped. You've seen it? Occasionally. Usually from a distance. They're wild now. Really wild. That's how it should be." They stopped at a ridge overlooking a river valley. Beth handed Daniel a pair of binoculars. "Down there," she said. By the river. Daniel raised the binoculars, adjusting the focus. At first, he saw nothing but trees and water. Then movement caught his eye, stalkers, 5 of them playing in the shallow water. They were hunting, working together to drive fish into the shallows where they could be caught. It was beautiful to watch, the coordination and communication between them. Pack behavior, honed by thousands of generations. One of the stalkers was larger than the others, its scales a distinctive midnight blue with hints of purple. It caught a fish and tossed it onto the bank, then turned to make sure the smaller stalkers were eating. "That's it," Beth said quietly. "Your stalker. The pack accepted it as a member, and now it's one of the primary hunters. That protective behavior, making sure the others eat first, that's unusual. Most stalkers are more focused on hierarchy, but this one seems to put the pack above itself." Daniel watched through the binoculars, his vision blurring with tears. The stalker looked healthy, strong. Its coat gleamed in the sunlight, the wound on its flank healed to nothing but a small scar. It moved with confidence, secure in its place within the group. It learned that on the ship, Daniel said softly. Learned that sometimes someone takes care of you not because they want something, but because you need it. It's just passing that forward. They watched for nearly an hour as the stalkers hunted and played and rested together. At one point, the blue stalker climbed onto a rock and threw back its head, singing a pack call. The others joined in, their voices harmonizing in that complex, beautiful way that had broken Daniel's heart the first time he heard it. But now it didn't sound lonely. It sounded complete. Should we go down? Daniel asked. Would it remember me? Beth considered this. Maybe, but is that what's best for it? You gave it freedom. Freedom from cages, from fear, from dependence. Even dependence on you. If you go down there, you risk becoming something it watches for. Something it waits for instead of being fully present in its own life. Daniel knew she was right. He'd saved the stalker so it could be wild, not so it could remain tethered to him. The kindest thing he could do now was stay away. Let it live the life it was meant to have without human interference. You're right, he said. We should go. As they turned to leave, the blue stalker suddenly raised its head, nostrils flaring. It was too far away to see Daniel clearly, but it was looking in his direction. For a long moment, it stood perfectly still, as if trying to identify a familiar scent on the wind. Then one of the other stalkers called to it, and it turned away, rejoining its pack. The drive back to the spaceport was quiet. Daniel kept seeing that moment when the stalker had looked up, had almost recognized him. Part of him wished he'd called out, made himself known, but a bigger part was glad he hadn't. The work you're doing with the conservation initiative, Beth said as they neared the port. It's making a difference. We're hearing about it even out here. Colonies that would have exterminated species are finding alternatives. It's slow change, but it's change. One creature at a time, Daniel said. That's how all change starts. One person, one choice, one act of compassion. Then another. Then another. Until suddenly the whole galaxy is looking at dangerous creatures differently. Back on his transport ship, heading to his next assignment, Daniel recorded a log entry. He did this sometimes, keeping a private record of his thoughts. Saw the stalker today, he said to the recorder. It's happy, healthy, part of a pack. Everything I hoped for when we set it free. I don't think I'll go back. It doesn't need me anymore. Maybe it never really did. I was just a bridge between the cage and freedom. That's enough. That's more than enough. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Captain Wren asked me once what humans are. I've been thinking about that question for over a year now. And I think I finally have an answer. We're the species that looks at something terrifying and asks, what if? What if it's not a monster? What if it's just scared? What if we tried to understand instead of destroy? That capacity for what if has gotten us in trouble throughout history, but it's also given us dogs and cats and horses and all the other creatures we've partnered with. It's let us survive on a dangerous world by making alliances instead of enemies. And now out here in space, maybe that's our real gift to the galaxy. Not our technology or our art or our science, but our willingness to reach out our hand to something with teeth and see what happens. He stopped the recording and looked out at the stars. Somewhere behind him, Haven's Rest was already too far away to see, and on that world a stalker that had once been called a terror hound was running through forests with its pack, free and wild and whole. Years later, Daniel would work with dozens of species. Some missions succeeded, some failed. Some creatures adapted to coexistence with colonists, some couldn't and had to be relocated. Each case was different, each requiring patience and understanding and the willingness to look beyond fear. But he never forgot the stalker. That first connection that had shown him what his life's work would be. In every aggressive creature he encountered, he looked for the fear underneath. In every impossible situation, he looked for the bridge between what was and what could be. And sometimes late at night on distant worlds, he would hear howls in the darkness, pack calls from predators marking territory, singing to the stars, and he would smile, remembering amber eyes and ridge fur soft under his fingers and the rumbling purr of a creature that had learned to trust. The galaxy was full of monsters. But Daniel had learned the truth that his species had always known, encoded in thousands of years of partnership with predators. Monsters were just people you hadn't understood yet, and sometimes if you were patient enough, brave enough, human enough, those monsters could become friends. That was the real story. Not about a human who saved a terror hound, but about a terror hound that saved a human, that showed him his purpose. That taught him the value of reaching out your hand, even when you're terrified. Because on the other side of that fear is connection, understanding, trust. The universe was vast and often cold and sometimes cruel, but it was also full of possibility, full of creatures that just needed someone to give them a chance, to see past the teeth and claws to the person underneath. And as long as there were humans willing to scratch behind the ears of something dangerous, there was hope. For the monsters, for the misunderstood, for everyone trying to find their place in a galaxy that didn't always make room for them. Daniel fell asleep that night thinking about the stalker, hoping it was happy, knowing it was free, grateful that their paths had crossed in that cargo hold so long ago. Sometimes the briefest connections changed everything. Sometimes a few weeks of trust and patience and compassion could ripple out in ways you never expected. He'd given the stalker its freedom, but the stalker had given him something too. A purpose, a calling, a reason to wake up every day and try to make the galaxy a little bit kinder, one misunderstood creature at a time. And that, Daniel thought as sleep finally claimed him, was more than enough. It was everything.